feeling the heat. The United States and Canada holding another round of trade talks at 9 a.m. Eastern after a tentative agreement was reached between the United States and Mexico. I spoke with Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross yesterday, who laid out why he thinks the deal is more important for Canada than the United States.
The key thing is the Canadian economy really can't survive very well without a deal with the U.S. They're too dependent on us, and particularly too dependent on the automotive sector. Since we've already resolved the automotive issues with Mexico, and those are not issues that are particularly adverse to Canada.
Here now is Texas Congressman Brian Babin, a member of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Congressman, your thoughts on the current trade negotiations and how quickly do we need to get a deal done with Canada?
Well, I'm very happy the way things have been going, Dagan. It's good to be with you this morning, by the way. But, you know, I feel like this is a very wise move on the part of Canada to get down and get to Washington and start negotiating. I think after seeing the success that we've had with Mexico, it certainly is in Canada's best interest to do so. You know, when you have bad policies, Americans seem to be, the American companies and workers, the ones that seem to be always hurt first. You know, I think we're just going to have to work with our trading partners. I'm really happy with some of the provisions that I've seen in with the one with Mexico, with labor standards and protecting American workers, and this sunset clause, I like that as well. But this is something that I think that Canada and the United States are going to work this out, and I believe it'll be something that'll be good for all three nations.
Congressman, it's Kevin Kelly, and I agree with you on the sunset clause, right? I mean, this agreement's over 24 years old, but I think the more important thing is we're working with Mexico, and we know the president has talked about a border wall. A border wall would include infrastructure. What are your thoughts on working with the Mexican government on that? Because it seems like a position that the president isn't really wanting to move, right? He's going to harp on the border wall until there's movement on that. So what are your thoughts on the Mexican government working with this administration?
I think the Mexican government would be very wise to work with our president. You know, let's face it, this is probably the biggest issue and the reason that Donald Trump was elected president in 2016. To stop the immigration problems that we've had, I think the #1 priority that I can tell you as a congressman here in Texas is the safety and security of our citizens here. And let me tell you something: if you don't have secure borders, you don't have a sovereign nation. And I think it's going to be incumbent upon Mexico to cooperate with our government, with President Trump, and try to stop some of this illegal immigration. You've got problems now. These are not just people looking for jobs. These are people coming in here. Human trafficking is terrible.
Well, let's talk. Let me pardon for the interruption, Congressman, but I want to ask you about that because we're talking about ICE and immigration. There were more than 150 people arrested in this massive ICE raid in North Texas yesterday. This and you were talking about this, the president doubled down on his border wall, saying Mexico will pay for it. Listen to the president, and I'll get more of your reaction.
Okay.
The wall will be paid for very easily by Mexico. It'll ultimately be paid for by Mexico.
Mexico's foreign minister said, not so fast, tweeting, "We just reached a trade understanding with the U.S. and the outlook for our relationship between our two countries is very positive. We will never pay for a wall, however. That has been absolutely clear from the very beginning." Where do you stand on things? Because one issue that a lot of people had trouble with is sanctuary cities, the funding for those sanctuary cities. Congress controls the power of the purse, and nothing was done to put pressure on these liberal cities in this country from remaining sanctuaries for those in the country illegally.
I was very disappointed, very frustrated. I voted for the SAFE Act, which was the Goodlatte 1 bill, which I thought was a decent bill, and it would have had provisions for a wall. I think that Mexico eventually will. In one way, in one fashion or another, it's going to wind up paying for this wall. Because I think at the last information I had was that illegal immigration is costing the American taxpayers about $140 to $150 billion a year. So the cost of this wall will certainly pay for itself in a very short period of time, as Americans are very, very weary of having our schools, our hospitals inundated, overrun, community services and entitlement programs, on and on, jobs being taken by illegal aliens, the victims of criminal aliens, and I've talked with these people. This is a very terrible situation, and I think the Americans are fed up, and they want to have secure borders, and I agree with that. So it's the biggest issue I think we have here in Texas. And we've got to start putting our country first. And as I said earlier, if you want a sovereign nation, you've got to have secure borders, and that's the way it's going to have to be.
Congressman,
and I'm hoping that we can do this in Congress. I'm looking forward to new leadership as we come into the next Congress that will really push the bills like the Goodlatte bill, not the compromise bill that came far short.
If the Republicans keep the House, who do you want to see as the Speaker?
Well, there's, so far there's really only been a name or two that have surfaced, and quite frankly, I think that's something that's going to be discussed as we go into the future over the next few weeks. But like you said, Dagan, number one, we got to hang on to the majority, and I really think that we will. I don't think Americans want to go back to higher taxes. We've got a booming economy, safer communities. We got a stronger military. We've got a leader in there now in the White House. I don't think they're going to want to reverse course on that, and I believe that we will hang on to it, and then we'll look at that. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it next year.
Congressman, always great to see you, and I love how within about 11 minutes I sounded like I was born and raised in Texas.
That's right. Thank you,
Southerners can't help
it.
You know, my accent just heads south, unavoidable.
It sounds good to me.
Congressman Brian Babin, take care.